In this video, we are going to be talking about Sretan Jokic, better known as Joca Amsterdam, one of the most feared crime bosses in all of Europe. In fact, you can say that the man's name still strikes fear into the hearts of many powerful people, including some of Europe's most notorious criminals. Watch this video till the end to learn all about the infamous crime boss from Serbia. So without further ado, let's get it on. Early life and association with Zeljko Raznatović Arkan. Sretan Jokic was born on October 24, 1962, in the village of Velika Krishna in Serbia. After finishing school, he was in the military for a bit, but he soon declared himself anti-communist, which, let's just say, didn't sit well with the Yugoslav communist regime at the time. Not long after that, he deserted the army and went to Austria, a go-to destination for most of the Yugo gangsters. The reason why most Yugoslavs, including the wannabe gangsters, found their haven in Austria was because of their status as political refugees. As for Jokic, he got involved in stealing and robbing. It was after he was accused of murdering 3 policemen that he escaped Austria and found his new home in Frankfurt, Germany. There, he came into contact with 2 of the most famous Serbian criminals at the time, Ljubomir Magas, better known as Ljuba Zemunak, and Zeljko Raznatović Arkan, his time in the Netherlands. However, it was in the Netherlands where Jokic's criminal career really flourished, hence the nickname Joca Amsterdam, as in the capital of the Netherlands. There, he came under the guardianship of the previously mentioned Zeljko Raznatović Arkan, who would later become the infamous warlord and crime boss. You can check out our video on Arkan for more details of his life and death. Now let's get back to Sretan Jokic. So as I was saying, Jokic came under the tutelage of Arkan in the Netherlands, and the two were involved in quite a few armed robberies. But as you might have guessed, robberies aren't exactly a good way of making money long term. Plus, it's very high risk. That's why Jokic joined the Yugoslav gang, which was led by Ljubinko Bečirović Duja, and got involved in more serious criminal activities. The right-hand man. Although Bečirović's group was called Belgrade Group, or the Belgrade Group, as in the capital of Serbia, it operated in the Netherlands capital of Amsterdam. This notorious group was involved in all kinds of criminal activities such as extortion, drug trafficking, and of course gambling. You know, the usual. As if that wasn't bad enough already, the members of the so-called Belgrade Group had quite a reputation as one of the most ruthless killers in the entire Dutch underworld. Oh wow, that's some reputation to have. Knowing what we know now about Joca Amsterdam, it really comes as no surprise that he quickly became the right-hand man of Belgrade Group leader Ljubinko Bečirović Duja, Belgrade Group versus Dutch gang. It was in the late 80s that the above-mentioned Belgrade Group waged a war with a local Dutch gang under the leadership of Klaas Bruinsma. So how did it all start, you might ask? You see, the Belgrade Group accused Bruinsma's men of stealing drug shipments. You already saw that coming, didn't you? Both gangs refused to cave in, as is usually the case, and that marked the beginning of the bloody war that took the lives of dozens of mobsters on both sides, including the leaders of both groups, Bečirović and Bruinsma, who were murdered by assassins. Bečirović was shot in his home while his men were outside in October 1990. He died in a hospital just 3 weeks later. Bruinsma, on the other hand, was shot by an ex-cop turned gangster, Martin Hoogland, near a hotel in Amsterdam in the summer of 1991. As you might have guessed already, Hoogland was an associate of the Belgrade Group. With both leaders gone, let's check out what Sretan Jokic was up to. Journey to the top. When Bečirović was assassinated, Jokic, being his right-hand man, became the new leader of the Belgrade Group. He continued to wage war and apply pressure on the Dutch gangsters. He was so ruthless that 2 of his targets decided they would rather spend a year and a half in prison than face Jokic's wrath. They tipped off the police to a van that was full of guns. The 2 men were standing near the van when police arrived and arrested them. His sentence. Judging by all this, it was clear that Jokic had an upper hand as far as notorious reputation was concerned. But still, that doesn't mean that Jokic himself wasn't in constant fear of retribution from the Dutch. Far from it, actually. In fact, when Dutch police raided his home, he assumed that they were killers and fired 2 shots at the police, injuring 1 cop in the process. As a result of this, Jokic was sentenced to 1,004 days in prison in 1993. But when the time came for Jokic to actually serve his time in prison, he was nowhere to be found, to the surprise of absolutely no one. How did he manage to escape, you ask? Well, if there's one thing Jokic is known for, besides being a ruthless crime boss that strikes fear in the hearts of his enemies, is that he has extensive contacts within the European underworld that make it extremely easy for him to escape on a whim, travel to any country he wishes, and run his criminal affairs from there. These contacts allowed him to escape the Netherlands and avoid serving his sentence, his time in Romania, and association with Milosevic. After Jokic had fled the Netherlands, the war between two gang groups continued. As for Jokic himself, he continued his criminal activities and eventually became a successful crime boss in Eastern Europe. His next stop? Romania. However, shortly after his arrival in Romania, he received an invitation from none other than the Yugoslav and Serbian president himself, Slobodan Milosevic. It was Zeljko Raznatovic Arkan who recommended Jokic to the president, and let's just say that Jokic didn't let him down. But what exactly did he do? You see, he was tasked by Milosevic to bring goods that had been put on the embargo list by the UN into what remained of Yugoslavia. At this point, Yugoslavia had already fallen apart, and it was only Serbia and Montenegro that remained. Anyway, these goods were officially imported in Romania and Bulgaria, and from there shipped into Serbia. Because of this, Milosevic also allowed Jokic to continue with whatever criminal activities he was doing at the time. And boy did he have a lot of them. On top of this, Jokic was also given a membership card of the Serbian Secret Service. He also continued to smuggle drugs from Asia into Europe, especially the Netherlands. Dutch retribution and Jokic's arrest. Speaking of the Netherlands, Willem Holleder, who took over after Klaas Bruinsma was killed, wanted Jokic gone. So he hired an assassin named Goran Marjanovic, but Jokic got wind of that plot and hired hitmen to kill Marjanovic instead. The days of Jokic avoiding the authorities came to an abrupt end in 2002, when he was arrested in Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, and soon extradited to the Netherlands in order to finally serve his sentence. The funny thing is that Jokic actually offered to pay off all Bulgarian foreign debt in return for his release. It was obviously yet another unsuccessful attempt for him to avoid justice. While serving his sentence in a highly secured prison in the Netherlands, he allegedly ordered the murder of Bulgarian gangster boss Milcho Bonev and his 5 bodyguards. But you see, that wasn't the only sentence he needed to serve. He was also convicted of ordering the murders of Goran Marjanovic and his girlfriend Maria Dodovic back in July of 1995, which is why he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. That's also why he was flown to Serbia in 2006, where he would serve his time in jail. But as it turned out, he was quickly released on bail. He decided to become a more respectable citizen, investing in former state-owned companies. What's interesting is that Jokic resided in a villa that once belonged to Slobodan Milosevic. He allegedly paid a hitman 1.5 million euros to assassinate a journalist. Jokic didn't last long as a more respectable citizen, as he was also accused of ordering the killings of a journalist, Ivo Pukanic, and his marketing director, Niko Franjek, who died in a bomb explosion in October of 2008 in Stara Vlaska Street in Zagreb, Croatia. Allegedly, it was Jokic who paid the hitman 1.5 million euros for these assassinations. Now that's a lot of money, but nothing is impossible for a crime boss as notorious and ruthless as Sretan Jokic. He's currently serving his 15-year sentence for the murder of Goran Marjanovic and his girlfriend in a Zabela prison in the city of Požarevac, Serbia, suing the state of Serbia for €500,000. What's interesting is that Sretan Jokic actually sought damages against the state of Serbia in April 2016 for unlawful detainment for the deaths of Croatian journalists Ivo Pukanic and Niko Franjek. He sought 60 million Serbian dinars, which is approximately, wait for it, €500,000. If that sounds unbelievable, wait until you hear that his trial in that case had already cost the state a whopping 11 million dinars, or almost €100,000 in legal fees. Well, that's it for today's video. We hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel with notifications on, so you don't miss more awesome crime stories like this one. Till next time.